I just wanted to, okay, it's recording. I just wanted to share a little bit of something that I got from my friend Yoni today. My friend Yoni, who I grew up with in Staten Island, his mother and stepfather had made Aliyah about 22, 23 years ago. And when they had made Aliyah, they moved to Efrat. And for those of you who remember, 20 years ago, it was also the second Intifada. And his mother, Sarah, was shot on her way to Efrat. And Yoni was still in America at the time before he had made Aliyah. It was a horrible and terrible time. And Yoni wrote today about his recollections. He says, when I was on my way to Israel for my mother's funeral almost 19 years ago, I was expecting to be at a small family funeral, maybe with a couple of family friends who could make it also joining us. I was wrong. There were so many people by the shul for the eulogies that there was an overflow of people onto the street above. It was a veritable sea of people. The same was the case when we went to the cemetery for burial. I couldn't see graves, walkways, or even the ground or trees. All I saw was the hundreds, perhaps thousands of mourners, all there to honor my mother and comfort me and my family. I felt as if the entire country was figuratively embracing us. I usually feel that embrace each year on Yom Hazikaron, Memorial Day, when I join in the throngs of mourners in the local cemetery. I stand by my mother's grave, embraced by the hundreds, if not thousands of people, mourning and honoring those who were killed. This year, I'm not able to go to the cemetery. I'm not able to feel that embrace, or so I thought. The Efrat municipality sent volunteers to all of the houses of people who've lost loved ones, either in military service or in an act of terrorism. These two girls in the picture came to stand with my family last night and this morning during the sirens. It's a small gesture, but it made me feel the embrace of the community, an embrace I thought I wouldn't get this year. Yonit and Noah, thank you so much. You have comforted me. So we come together. It would be nice if we could send to all our brothers and sisters in Israel how much it means to us. That they have put their lives on the line for the sake of the state of Israel, and that so many people have been lost defending it, and just sometimes even living there. We wish there was a way that we could get across this message to them. And unfortunately, this is the only way to do it. But we are privileged to have here a veteran of the Israeli Defense Forces, someone who has served his country proudly. And so I give it over to Kahn and to Sammy to help us commemorate those who were lost, and also to slowly move into a celebration of the 72 years that have transpired because of people like him. So I give it over to Kahn. You can unmute yourself, Harrison.
Good evening and welcome to our Tekes Ma'avar, Ceremony of Transition. Tonight we have a special program commemorating the transition from Yom Hazikaron to Yom Haatzmaut, from Israel's Memorial Day to Independence Day. A transition from dark to light, from death to life, from sadness to joy, from fear and crisis to celebration of national pride. We are about to go from Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, a day in which we pay tribute, give honor, and remember those who gave their lives as part of the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, and those whose lives were cut short as victims of terror. Today we offer condolences and prayers of healing to the families of loved ones they've left behind. Yom HaZikaron ends tonight at sundown, but we don't live in the dark. We celebrate our blessings, and one of the greatest blessings Hashem has bestowed upon us in our generation happened 72 years ago with the establishment of the State of Israel as a Jewish state, a Jewish homeland. Tonight we celebrate Yom Haatzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, a time in which we dance, Hallel, sing, and marvel in the modern-day miracle of Medinat Israel, the state of Israel, the holy land that our people have been praying for generations to become ours again. And it is Israel, Eretz Yisrael, a place we can really call home. We will start the program with Hatikva, and then I will have the honor to introduce our guest speaker, who's very dear to me, Mifaked, Harrison Hillel Kahn, followed by Imesh Kocheh, leading into some live music celebration. So please rise wherever you are for Hatikva. Our guest speaker tonight, Harrison Hillel Kahn, comes to us from Jerusalem, where he is a madrich at Yeshivat Torah V'Avodah, as well as a rabbinic assistant to Rav Ari Cutler at Yeshivat HaKotel. Harrison is a Hank graduate, a former member of the Young Israel of Plainview Little League team, and former star Ein Kelohenu and Friday Night Yigdal Club member. He lived here in Plainview for the first 18 years of his life and made Aliyah this year. He made Aliyah after serving as a squad commander in a combat unit in the IDF. I'd like to share a quick story before I turn it over to Harrison. It was about 3 years ago at 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank God we had the privilege to take a family trip to visit Harry during his first year at HaKotel. We stayed in an Airbnb right off of Ben Yehuda on Rehov Rav Kook. And it came with underground parking, so going in and out was easy. There was one night that Harry needed to get back to yeshiva. So it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and we got in the car and off we went to the old city. And we were stopped at a red light outside the Jaffa Gate. And I noticed an unusual amount of pedestrian traffic. It was crossing right in front of our car. Modern Orthodox people, Hasidim, young mothers with kids in strollers, old and young people, and soldiers. Harry turned to me and he waved his arm and he said, "Daddy, this is ours. I want to be here." And Baruch Hashem, not only did his dream come true, the dream that I share with his mother, my dear wife Jody, our dream has come true to fulfill the mitzvah of the Luach HaKan, to send your child out of the nest and into the world and see him survive and thrive is every parent's dream. Hashem gave us another dream, another present that we're experiencing today, right now. And it's the present of having the privilege to be together since before Pesach and live through these crazy days and nights and crazy days and nights, and crazy days and nights, together here in Plainview. To have you here, Harry, to share your words and message with our extended Yit family is very humbling. I bring you our guest speaker, Mifaked Harrison Hillel Kahn.
Turn off your sound. Thank you for that introduction, Dad. That story reminded me of what the head of the army, the Ramat Kal, said this morning at Har Herzl after their ceremony. He quotes with a sentence, very concise, but it just speaks so strongly to what we said. He said, these three words represent the greatest triumph of all. Yesh lanu medina. We have a state. It's the words that I felt the second I landed in Israel, in the beginning of Shana Aleph, and the words that I feel still today. So we're coming out of Yom Hazikaron. Yom Hazikaron is the name that we gave the holiday for commemorating all those lives lost in order to have the state of Israel that we have today. But Yom Hazikaron is also the name that we have for Rosh Hashanah. So obviously the question that we must ask is what's the connection? And I think the connection could really teach us something that's really important about today and about our relationship with it. We call Rosh Hashanah Yom Hazikaron because we say that the shofar is supposed to remind Hashem of the Akedas Yitzchak, of the Akedah. And because he'll remember that event, he'll judge us favorably because of that fond memory. We have to ask, though, why do we need to remind Hashem of something that happened? Hashem has the greatest memory ever. The Sefer HaChinuch explains so beautifully, and this message is what we're going to take to start off with, that the shofar is for Hashem, but it's also for us. It's to remind us of the Akedas Yitzchak and for us to connect with that event and with the ideals that happened at that event. And by us feeling connected to the Akedas Yitzchak, Hashem will relate the Akedas Yitzchak to us. And this idea of memories not just being thoughts in the past, but being something to connect to, is something that I feel so strong in Yom HaZikaron more than any other day of the year. So as my dad said, I graduated from Hank, and after high school, I went to Hakotel for Shana Aleph, what started as just Shana Aleph. And it was a year, like I had an experience like most people, of really just getting experience and falling in love with Eretz Yisrael. It was only my second time ever going. We went once as a family in 2012, and until then, I wasn't there. And I was really not just exposed to the land of Israel, but to the people of Israel. I went to Yeshivat HaKotel, which is a Hesder yeshiva, which means that it's an Israeli yeshiva, but then we had a small American program within it. And the Hesder layout is that instead of doing a regular army service of 2 years and 8 months, you draft into the yeshiva where you're there for a year and a half, followed by a shortened army service of a year and a half, and then a year of yeshiva to follow. And when I had that exposure, when I found myself surrounded by people that were committed to learning Torah all day and then ultimately committed to the army, it was something that I wanted to be part of. But not just something that I wanted to be part of, it was something that I was willing to give for and to really, really be part of. And all of it really hit harder on Yom HaZikaron. Because I found myself on Har Herzl, Shana Aleph, with all my friends from America. And I just remember looking around and seeing the faces of all the families that lost their sons and their daughters and their cousins and their parents. And I felt like it was something I wanted to be part of, which I already knew. But I felt like it was my time to give, to be part of it. Because you can feel, I felt like I was part, but I didn't really, there was something missing. I didn't put any effort into it other than just being born a Jew. And I felt like it was my time to give a little bit more. And Yom HaZikaron is a day that we value their lives and what they live for. And Rav Kook has a line that really just resonates with me a lot and sort of gives me the strength gave me the strength to do what I did by going to the army and to really deal with all the hardships that come with Aliyah. Rav Kook says, our lives are only given value based upon what we would be willing to give them up for, which on the surface might sound like he's saying you have to give up your life for what you believe in, which it might be true, but at the same time, it's not to say chas v'shalom that we should die for everything we believe in. Rav Kook is saying that the value is based off of what we commit our lives for, not necessarily sacrifice, but to commit. And so I made the decision that I was going to commit my life not only to Am Yisrael, but to Eretz Yisrael, and really give to the land and give to the people. So after some discussion, I made it back to Israel after Shana Aleph to draft into the army, which was an experience. It was more of a chain of experiences, all different ones in their own way. But one that I was thinking about today specifically was my first Yom Kippur in the army. You know, Yom Kippur is sort of a day that, up until this whole Corona event, is very, we can't imagine like things outside of the shul happening. We can't imagine not davening with a minyan. Now we can. But for me, that Yom Kippur was different because we were in training. It was the first 4 months of training, so we're still in basic training. And there was a terror attack in Somat HaGush, in the Gush Etzion junction, where Ari Fold was killed, Hashem Yikom Damam. Now, I knew him from my community in Efrat. When I was in the army, I lived with my cousins that we have in Efrat, and davened at the same shul as Ari. So when I saw that he was killed, it hit me really hard. I remember it was on my way to base. I was taking a nap. My base is all the way down south, and you get the best time to sleep is on the way to base because you're not going to sleep once you get there. So I was catching up on sleep. I woke up. My friend tapped me. He said, "Look what just happened. Ari Fold was killed." And I'm not an emotional person. I just didn't know. I just wanted to do something. I felt like Ari Fold was killed. I'm in the army. Like I got to do something. And luckily, we were gifted that we were called up as a sort of an extra security unit for the Gush Etzion for that week, which was Yom Kippur. I think he was killed during the Aseret Yemei Tshuva. On Yom Kippur, only a few days later, we were already back we were back in the Gush, specifically my unit of guys that weren't even finished with training, but they just brought us up to sort of give us that experience and to bring extra soldiers in. And it was Erev Yom Kippur. We're sitting in the army base just a mile away from where the terror attack happened. And they were giving us the different jobs and different roles that we were going to have over Yom Kippur, which everyone just had like a sort of a sad attitude towards them, because who wants to spend the Yom Kippur, meaning like standing at a gate, making sure no one comes in. Everyone felt like it was going to ruin their Yom Kippur. And I remember my officer came in and he said, "Okay, we got a bunch of different things to do." And me and my friend, we were like, Asaf, his name was Asaf. I said, "Asaf, what's the hardest one? What's the worst one?" Worst obviously being a word that's up for perspective in order to define. And he said, "Okay, there's one that's with me tomorrow night, and we're gonna have to spend the whole night doing a foot patrol around this yeshuv called Givaot. And that's gonna be Yom Kippur. It's gonna be a few hours at night, a few hours in the morning. And it's gonna be an experience." I'm like, "Okay, great, sounds good. Like, you trust us, fine, we're good, we're in." And we went. It was Yom Kippur. It was a few hours, just an hour or two before Kol Nidre. We got sent to the yeshuv. We got dropped off with whatever we had, which was not much. It was pretty much our gear, full with water. My friend brought snacks. I didn't bring snacks because I was like, "Oh, I'll tough it out," which I regret a little bit. And we were ready for an experience. We were ready for something that was out of the ordinary. First hour goes by, second hour, and then we hear the siren of the yeshuv. Some of the yeshuvim have like an alert that goes off when like Shabbos comes or when Yom Tov comes. So we heard that. We're like, "Okay, it's Yom Kippur." And that was it. We knew it was Yom Kippur. We didn't feel any different. We didn't do anything differently. We just continued walking across the fence because that was our job at the time. And I remember standing on one hilltop on one of the yeshuv and sort of seeing the other hilltop. It was a very small yeshuv. And we saw there were big windows to the Beit Knesset. I remember seeing the Chazan, Chazan was at the window that sort of overlooks the view of where we were. And I just remember seeing him like davening away. I don't know what they were up to. I'm assuming they were up to Kol Nidre. And it was just a bizarre feeling. I felt like a spectator. But at the same time, meaning it was sad, meaning it was not my normal Yom Kippur. It wasn't my Kol Nidre at the Young Israel Plainview. It wasn't my Kol Nidre at all. There was no Kol Nidre other than if we were lucky and it was quiet when somebody opened the door to the Beit Knesset, we got a little glimpse of davening. And then we finished our time. It was 5 hours later, and they were still they were davening for part of it. We finished our term. We went to the shul, all sweaty, take off our stuff, go inside with our radios. It just felt weird, but people were looking at us smiling. People came up and like shook our hands. Little kids came up. Something I did not know was this yeshuv called Givaot is actually a very special yeshuv in Israel that has a lot of the children there have special needs, and they have sort of like a framework set up for them. Anyways, they thanked us. We davened for a little bit. They came back and told us that something happened. They got an alert. We're going to be on the foot patrol for the rest of the night. And we spent the next 7 hours walking around the yeshuv for the rest of the night. It was I think it was 13 hours altogether with a half-hour break for davening in at night. And that was my Yom Kippur. I remember I go back to base. We're back to base at 7:30 in the morning. Go to sleep, wake up, and it's about mincha time. Then had another job to do. And that was my Yom Kippur. But those moments where I looked into the Knesset made me realize everything that I was doing and sort of validated all the work that I was putting in. And sort of realizing that it's not an easy path. It's not necessarily an enjoyable path, but it's something that has to be done. And if it has to be done, I'm honored that it had to be done by me. And that's sort of Aliyah in general. Aliyah, it's a bumpy road. That's not always easy. You miss family events. I have a friend who told me a story recently that the rabbi tells them about what's it like to make Aliyah. He said the night before his son's bris, he was up all night crying. He said he was crying on one hand because his family couldn't be there. His parents were going to miss the bris. His brother was going to miss the bris. But at the same time, he was crying all night because he had a son who was born in the state of Israel. And that story resonated with me a lot and sort of really just says a lot about the whole experience. And now we found ourselves in the transition from Yom Hazikaron to Yom Haatzmaut, which is a very stark, quick transition, where we go from the sadness of sadness, where you feel in Israel, you walk around, you feel the sadness in the air, because it's just emanating from every person. Everyone knows someone or knows someone who was close to someone. And now we go to Yom Haatzmaut, which is just the happiest day. And this transition is one that has to happen. And we can, and as Rav Taragin told me that spoke today, Rav Taragin from Yeshivat HaKotel said, we cannot have a Yom Haatzmaut without a Yom HaZikaron. Without acknowledging the past and acknowledging the path that it took in order to get to where we are today, we can't truly celebrate. And it's also an interesting time, meaning the fact that they juxtapose the day to day is one thing, but also last week we just celebrated Yom HaShoah, commemorating the Holocaust. And I think the fact that it's so close, but also there's a certain disconnect between Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaShoah, sort of is this also idea of, it's the path. A lot of people say, like, if Eretz Yisrael was established at any point during Jewish history, it would have been a big deal. But the fact that it came at the end of the Shoah made it that much greater. And this idea of the people that were killed in the Shoah were killed at Kiddush Hashem, that's at an extremely high level. But it's hard to really truly believe that they were killed in order to establish the state of Israel. But we know it's connected somehow, and I think that's the idea of this week that we just had in between the 2 days. It's connected, and we know it's connected. There is somewhat of a disconnect. There might be a few days in between, but we can't have Yom HaZikaron and we can't have Yom Haatzmaut without having Yom HaShoah, and now we can't have Yom Haatzmaut without having Yom HaZikaron. And validating these people's lives, really appreciating and acknowledging that they gave up their lives in order to have what we have today, brings such a level of simcha in Eretz Yisrael that's like nothing you could ever feel. There's everyone wearing blue and white. I'm wearing a white shirt now, and it's treated like a chag, like a yom tiv. With challah at night, there are like live challahs on Facebook Live and everything. But it's really just a big holiday, and it's hard to imagine that the same families that are crying all day over their children are now celebrating and having a barbecue. But it's really just it's the way it is, because they realized that there was a reason, that it wasn't just Al Kiddush Hashem, but it was Al Kiddush Hashem in order to establish what we have today. And that was something that I valued and was ready to commit my life for. The dual value, which is why I really resonated with drafting with Hesder, to value the Torah learning and the year and a half of that, which is something that's extremely important, but to also value serving Am Yisrael through the army, which was my outlet. And everyone has their own outlet. I'm not saying the army is for everyone. I worked in 2 different yeshivas, and everyone's like, tell me why I should go to the army, tell me why I should go to the army. And I tell them it's not for everyone. And if you're asking me why you should go to the army, you shouldn't go to the army, because they're going to step on you and it's going to stink. But it's sort of an experience that for me made me feel like I was part of the history and the story of the Jews, even though I always felt like that. But for some reason, for me, it was to really take action and commit myself and go through really just mental and physical challenges in order to do that. Was my way of sort of giving back, and what gives me the strength to fly back to Eretz Yisrael after this whole pandemic ends, soon. But also give me the strength to go on every day. And I know it gives my family the strength also to send me back with a smile and not crying over the fact that I'm leaving, because they realize the importance, and they realize that in the big picture, that's where we're supposed to be. And it's extremely important. And I just guess in this time, I really just wanted to share that with the community. And that's really it. And we should see the happy ending to the story soon with the coming of Mashiach. Take it away, man. My dad's now, we're going to sing, I guess, Inosh Kachech, followed by some happy songs to sort of lead into the Chag. And thank you for listening. Let's go for it. Inosh Kachech, Yerushalayim, Tishkach, Tishkach, Tishkach Yemini, Imesh Kachech, Yerushalayim, Tishkach, Tishkach, Tishkach Yemini,
I'm confused. This is the opposite.
No, it just took you off.
Is that on camera? Video, maybe that's it. Are you following that? No, that's, yeah.
ends our program. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Ari. And thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, David, and everybody for showing up.
I think there's community.
Thank
on
you.
the Zoom.
Wonderful.
All right.
Wonderful.
Thank you to the Kahn.
Go ahead. Yashikoa. Yashikoa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good job, Harry.
Thank you.
All right. First of all, thank you all to Sam. We really appreciate it. It was everyone that tomorrow at 8 o'clock you can join us. And then tomorrow, 8 o'clock a.m. Vital just remind me. And then tomorrow at 7 o'clock p.m. We will have. Bring your families. We'll have an online tech. It should be lots of fun for all of us to enjoy together. There's no limit to the number of players, so we want all of you there. And then on Sunday, we have a scholar in residence. Rabbi Dr. Judah Goldberg will be doing a lunch and learn on Sunday at p.m. I would have done it later, I'm sorry, but for him, he's got to go to work every day. But he is a emergency physician in Israel, and he is also a published medical ethicist and teacher in Israel. And he's going to be telling us about some of his experiences there and some of the halachic and ethical issues that have come up in the hospital that he has had to deal with and that others have had to deal with. And so I hope you'll join us for that. That's on Sunday. So thank you all for showing up, and we really appreciate it. And have a wonderful and happy Yom Haatzmaut.